Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to CIE San Francisco Bay Area Technical Talk. Today, we have our speaker, William Kao, Dr. William Kao in this meeting with us. And we also have CIE volunteer Vicky and the CIE volunteer Meng to assist us in this Zoom meeting. So I'm still seeing people are joining. Okay, 2 people in waiting room. So because we have a lot of people register this event, which is good, our Zoom can hold, I think, up to 500 people, no problem. But we do mute everybody at this stage. And we will allow people to ask questions and talk to the speaker in the Q&A session, okay? So audience, if you have any question, please type your question in the chat. Our volunteer will keep an eye on them and record the question, and we will ask all questions during after the talk and when the Q&A session begins. Okay, that's just a reminder to you. So unfortunately, we cannot allow everybody to speak during the talk. So that's a little reminder before I start the presentation today. So I'm the host. My name is Yan Shu. I will be hosting this Zoom meeting today. Okay, so let me go to my next slide. Okay, please, if you haven't done so, please join our media channels. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have LinkedIn, we have WeChat, and we have a YouTube channel. You can sign up our CIE weekly e-newsletter through this QR code. And our website is cie-sf.org. Okay, allow me to take a moment to introduce CIE to all of you. If this is the first time you participate at a CIE event, we are very happy to see you, and we're very happy to see you if you're returning from previous events. So CIE, Chinese Institute of Engineers, was established in Cornell University in 1917. 2 famous founding fathers are Zhan Tianyu and Lin Hongxun. And CIE just celebrated its 100th anniversary in Bay Area in 2017. And in this year, we are celebrating 104th anniversary in 2022, I believe. Okay, and our Bay Area chapter was established in 1979. This is a photo of the 40th anniversary in 2019. There's a large Chinese population, a Chinese community, and Chinese language speaking community in the Bay Area. And our chapter is a nonprofit organization. We strive to serve all engineers and students, especially in San Francisco Bay Area. The mission of our chapter is to promote technological advancement, networking, and communicating among engineers and scientists, and to promote the well-being of the engineering community. Okay, we hold many different activities. Since the pandemic, unfortunately, we have moved all activities to online. And in the next slide, I will show some online activities we have done during pandemic. And when we host offline or in-person events, we host a lot of seminar talks, and we invite different speakers, and we host some dinners as well. Okay, so I believe in the US we have 6 chapters in the larger regions of the US, and in Bay Area chapter we have 5 technical groups. So today's talk, Dr. William Kao, he's in charge of emerging technology group in Bay Area chapter. And I am from electronic design technology group, and we're co-hosting this event. And the 3 other technical groups are electrical engineering and computer science, and the biomedical engineering group, and the young CIE group. So each group has its own events and activities, and sometimes we co-organize events together. So please, if you're interested, definitely check our website. We post all upcoming events in our website. Okay, so we have hosted various offline events, and we look forward to bringing in-person events back as soon as possible. Just a little bit of myself. I moved to Bay Area about 5 to 6 years ago, and I quickly I quickly get to know CIE through a friend, and I became a volunteer. I volunteer a few times, and I really enjoy this warm community in CIE. Okay, so in 2020 and 2021, we hosted a virtual ceremony and virtual job fair. And okay, 2021 to 2021, we have our webinars under COVID time. Most of these are recorded, and they are posted on our YouTube channel. So if you are interested, please check it out. This is just a recapitulation of our Asian American end of year award ceremony program. The whole ceremony was also recorded and posted on YouTube. Here's more flyers and materials from that event. Okay, so this is the end of my introduction of CIE to you. And I will show this slide again at the end of today's seminar to remind you to stay tuned in one or more of our media channels. So without further ado, let me introduce today's speaker, Dr. William Kao. So he received a bachelor degree in electric EE and MSEE, and also PhD from University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. He worked in semiconductor and the electrical design automation industries for more than 30 years, holding several senior and executive engineering management positions at TI and Xerox and Cadence Design Systems. And I believe many of you are familiar with Dr. William Kao. William Kao is a popular speaker in CIE. He has given so many so many informative seminars, especially on emerging technologies. He has so many awards and other distinguishments you can check. And last but not least, and most importantly, Dr. Cao is a technology watcher, learner, and teacher. So let me hand over to Dr. William Cao.
Thank you, Yansu.
No problem. Let me stop share so you can. Okay.
So just be patient for a second. I'm trying to bring my presentation.
Yes, take your time. It won't go into presentation
mode. Now should be okay. Sorry,
yes, good.
Sorry,
good.
I was trying to navigate between all the Zoom bars. Okay. So
now it's good. Yeah.
I hope everybody can see now my presentation on the full screen. So my name is William Gao. I'll be talking about 2022 technology trends and predictions. Normally, every year, I start the month of January by talking about the current year's technology trends and predictions. So today, I'll talk about the year 2022. This is the agenda for tonight's talk. I've actually, over the last 3 or 4 months, starting around October of last year, I've actually started reading the material for this year. So tonight's presentation will cover material from several of the top research firms and think tanks. The ones that are most famous right now are Garner Research. I'll talk about the technology trends that they envision for this year. Also, Forbes magazine also usually does a survey and poll. Just to cover internationally, I'm covering the trends by Damo Academy from China. And I'll talk about the overall, I think I'll cover about five or six presentations and try to give a more overview of the whole technology sector. Okay, and then end up by doing a summary and the conclusion. Okay, so let's start with the Garner Research. Garner Research is basically focusing this year on 3 major themes. First one is engineering trust. Second one is sculpting change. And the third one is accelerating growth. So these are the 12 trends that I'll be talking about. I'll go over each of these trends, at least in relatively in some detail. So under engineering trust, there's the 4 trends are the data fabric, cybersecurity mesh, privacy enhancing computation, and cloud native platforms. Then moving to sculpting change, I'll talk about composable applications, decision intelligence, hyper automation, and AI engineering. And then last on the accelerating growth theme, I'll cover distributed enterprises, total experience, autonomic systems, and generative AI. Now, some of these may be foreign to you. So hopefully at the end of the presentation, you have a understanding of what each of these terms mean. All right, so please be patient at the beginning. They may sound like some of them may be vague terms, but hopefully at the end of the presentation, everything will become clear. Okay, so let's start with the first theme. The first theme is engineering trust. So the first thing that we need to get in terms of the engineering community as well as the lay person is that you have to build the trust. So the trust is built on engineering, and because if you don't have trust, basically nobody believes you, right? So that's the starting point, is to build enough trust in the audience. And this is done by going through repeatable and scalable processes. So the thing can be repeated more than once, and also it can extend beyond the scope of, say, just a few. It can go from few to many. Okay, so let's start with the first trend. The first trend is called data fabric. Okay, so I think everybody knows what two things about the term. Okay, right now, as you know, we are living in the era of data. Okay, so in the 20th century, the 20th century was the era of oil. So oil was the most valuable asset. Now moving to the 21st century, the most valuable asset is actually data. Okay. So it looks like there's a lot more participants joining in. So maybe if the staff can help me, you know, I made those so that I don't have to see the thing on my screen. So number one, we live in the new era of data. So everything is data dependent. Second thing, what's a fabric? The fabric is almost like a piece of cloth. Okay, so whenever you're making a dress, it's made up of a fabric. Okay, so all the data that we see, we have to integrate all the data. So the fabric allows us to do that. Okay, so allows us to manage the data, because the data can be distributed. It comes from many different sources, and it can be also different formats. Okay, so the data fabric allows us to integrate everything. And not only that, but it allows us to scale. Okay. Okay, so this slide shows a little bit about the role of the data fabric. So in the era of data, we have many aspects of data, from the data discovery to data management, data processing, data access, and so on. So the data fabric is the one that sort of like unites everything into one area. Okay. So it is a set of, okay, I still see a lot of people joining. Okay, the data fabric is an architecture as well as services, and it allows us to unite not only things that are on the cloud, but as well as on the edge. Okay, so if you see this picture here on the lower side, is that the data fabric, the fabric is sort of like the piece of cloth, and allows us to integrate both services that are existing in the cloud as well as on the device or on the edge. Okay, the next thing that is very hot right now is about this data security. Okay, and right now the data transcends the physical perimeter. Before, we used to talk about a firewall. So every company will build a firewall and they will protect all the data that's inside the firewall. Well, right now, all the data is across all the cyberspace. So we need to create a security mesh that covers the whole cyberspace. Okay. So, so that's what we call cybersecurity mesh. CSMA is a cybersecurity mesh architecture. Okay. So it allows us to go beyond the perimeter, the physical perimeter, and goes across all aspects of the data. So as they say, a picture is always worth 1,000 words. So with every slide that you see in text, you don't need to pay too much attention just to grab the concept. But here in a picture form, so here, this is a mesh. Okay, a mesh is sort of like, you can view it as a matrix or several components of it. And then inside there, you have the digital assets. And then you also have the services. And then you also have the security measurements. Okay, so you want to provide security everywhere. Okay, so that's what the cybersecurity mesh is defined as. Now, the third trend along this area is of trust is called the privacy enhancing computation. So two things that people worry about the data. Number one is the data security. The second one is data privacy. Okay, so this is something that is relevant to each of us individually. So it can protect personal and sensitive information. So there are four, I'm going to be talking just to introduce everybody with four technologies that fall under the category of privacy enhancement computation, so PEC, okay? So starting from the most secure is the homomorphic encryption. There's also the secure multi-party computation, differential privacy, and unfortunately, the last one is being blocked by Zoom, but it will be covered in the next slide. Okay, so homomorphic encryption, just to say what that is that usually data, in order to make it so that it's not everybody can deal with it, usually data is very often encrypted. Okay, so homomorphic encryption means that you can deal with the data even in the uncoded or in encoded form. You don't need to decipher it first before you can work on the data. So you can work on encrypted data. Okay, so that's homomorphic. Homomorphic is of the same form. That means that if the data is encrypted, the processors and the computation can also work on the same format of encrypted data. The second one is SMPC. It's a secure multi-party computation. Okay, that means that there's more than one party involved. Okay, so that's also something that you need to have computational methods. Differential privacy means that even though you're dealing with a group of data, you're not really letting people know about any single individual in the group. Okay, so it will gather the thing that is common for the whole group, but it will not reveal any information about a particular individual. And then the last one is the trusted execution environment. Okay, so all of these privacy and enabler technologies, one can spend, again, just 1 hour just talking about privacy and enabled technology. So because tonight's talk is focusing on the overview, I'm just mentioning here, but maybe in the future we can discuss about these technologies in more detail in a separate seminar. So the next trend is called cloud native platforms. Okay, so right now everybody is familiar with the cloud, and we need to have an architecture that is resilient. That means that it cannot be tampered. Is elastic. That means that it's scalable, and it's also agile. Agile meaning that you can make changes very fast. Okay, So right now, a lot of people are providing things as a service. Okay, so providing entire solutions as a service. Okay, and they are based on the cloud. So that's why it's called cloud native platforms. Unfortunately, I still see the bar. You don't see it in your screen, but on my screen, the Zoom bar is actually blocking my lower part of my slide, but that's okay. Okay, so this slide displays all the attributes that are important to a cloud native platform. Okay, it provides stability. It can be applied to many apps. It has adaptability, that it can adapt to new things. It's scalable, you know, from few to many, and it's also flexible. So these are the characteristics that are required from the cloud native platforms. Okay. The next, moving to the second major theme, is called sculpting change. So everybody knows that a change usually comes with a change comes a disruption. So the main objective is to manage the change so that you can anticipate some of the problems, okay, and auto tune it, so that the change is actually can be mitigated and minimize the impact or the disruption. So that's called sculpting the change. We have to deal with the change because, as they say, the only thing that is certain in this world is change. But it would be nice to be able to control it. And that's why the word sculpting the change. Okay, so the first trend under sculpting change is that composable applications. So this is following the trend of being adaptable, right? So if you can have an architecture that is modular, okay, then every time you need a solution, you can recompose the modules. And the fusion team is a team that's made up of both business experts together with technology experts. And then they can craft a solution, okay, a business solution. And what they do is they make it composable so that they can use a modular architecture and then put together bits and pieces and put together an application or a solution. So again, this is the picture, is that it's based on the concept of modularity, okay? And it also takes advantage of the agility. That means to be able to change very rapidly because you are using modules, okay? So normally, whenever companies are moving to digitalization, right now everybody's moving to a digital world. Many of the hurdles are like, you know, you don't have enough the skills to in the workforce or in your company to be able to do it, to move to a digital world. And also sometimes the thing is done very slowly. So what you're trying to do is that using composable applications, you're trying to leverage the modularity and make it more efficient and more adaptable as you go. Okay, the next trend is decision intelligence. Okay, so this is something that in the next slide, I'll talk about how normally a decision is being made. The concept about this slide is that how you can leverage the technology and the machines to help you automate and make decisions in a better form, leveraging AI, for example. So normally, when people, let's say that when we humans make a decision, usually this is the way that's called what they call the pyramid, okay? On the bottom, you have the sea of data. And based on the data, if you organize it, then it becomes, and you summarize it, then the data becomes information that is useful. Furthermore, if you work on the information, then and you learn from it, you analyze it and you learn it, then it becomes a knowledge. Okay. And then finally, based on the knowledge, then you can take an action. So that's the way that the decision process works from data up to the final decision. So this slide basically shows how we're combining machines, using AI and using data analytics. That's the artificial portion of it, and combine it with a human judgment. So we're basically combining machines and humans to hopefully be able to make decisions faster and better. All right. So the machines augment the humans in this combination. The next trend is called hyper automation. Now everybody is familiar with automation. Automation means like using robots, using technology to automate some of the process that we normally use in a company or in a industry, in a warehouse or in the industry. But hyper automation is going beyond that. Okay. So again, it allows you to scale, to a larger scale. And also the benefits of automation is that you can improve the quality, you can achieve a higher speeds and become more efficient. Okay. So here, again, this is a picture. Moving from simple automation to hyper automation. Hyper means in a high gear, right? High gear of automation. So it's a combination of things. Is that normally in simple automation, you're just trying to automate a single tasks, okay? And then you continue by automating not only as individual tasks, but the whole process. And then later on, you're trying to automate even some operations, okay? So there are many factors that help you achieve or enhance from going from simple automation to hyper automation. Event processing, how you interface with the user. So it's called UX is user experience. And also how do you incorporate intelligence, machine intelligence, okay? And also data analytics. So that's the way to go from simple automation to hyper automation. So that's the idea of about hyper automation. Okay, next trend is called AI engineering. So everybody heard about the AI, right? Artificial intelligence. Well, in order for the AI to become really effective, you really need to make it into engineering. So, normally when we talk about individuals, we talk about scientists and we talk about engineers. Engineers are the people who need to understand the science, but then you also put in processes in place so that the whole thing can be repeatable and also scalable. So that's what the engineering part of it comes in, okay? And I mentioned before that you need to form teams, engineering teams, what we call fusion teams, that you have people who know the business as well as people who know the technology, and they together craft a solution, okay? So to expand a little bit more about the engineering part of it. So this slide shows that to make it into engineering is not really trivial, right? So because you have different aspects you have to be knowledgeable and implement on various aspects. For example, we'll talk about here all over the place, you see data, you have models, you have data generation, you have data storage, you have to interface with the customers. Okay, so this means that basically there's the process is actually a very complex one. And in order to be able to succeed, you need to worry about all aspects of it, okay? And so that goes beyond just the the scientific principles. You need to worry about, make sure that it is actually engineered, okay? So that's the difference between an engineer and a scientist, right? So engineer is actually more practical, but you need to worry about aspects beyond the scientific thing. You have to worry about practicality, you have to worry about business, you have to worry about cost, you have to worry about efficiency, and so on. So this is the concept about AI engineering. It's not enough just to say, well, let's know all the algorithms in AI or machine learning, but also how to make it into an engineering solution. So whenever we talk about AI engineering, of course, there are engineers involved. And then, so in this slide, I'm covering what's the role of an AI engineer. Okay, you have AI scientists, or the people who are actually working on the algorithms, on the how. But then what's the role of an AI engineer? So when we talk about AI engineering, that means that there's a, when we talk about AI engineering, that means that there's a engineer that is working on it. So what are the roles of the AI engineer? Okay. So here there, I'm not going to go over each of them, but basically you can look at it. You have to do research. You have to create and implement the, understand the algorithms, implement it, right? And then after all, you have to go and maintain it. You have to talk to the customer. You have to do training and so on. So just like in any endeavor, an engineer has to worry about the whole enchilada, right? Okay. Okay, the last theme is called accelerating growth. So first we build trust, then you sculpt the change, you handle the change, and finally you want to scale it, and then you have to grow it. Okay, so so these are the trends along the how to grow the function. So number one trend is called distributed enterprise. So right now with the COVID-19, actually a lot of the offices and businesses, they're all going they're all being dispersed. So people working from home, there's multiple people working from different places. They're all over the map. So it's called distributed rather than centralized, rather than we used to everybody go to the office and everybody's in the office. Well, right now, a lot of people working from home, right? And then you're also working from different parts of the world. People in India, people in the US, people in China, and people in Europe, okay? So the concept, especially because of the COVID, it has gradually been migrated from a centric organization to a distributed environment, okay? So it's digital first and it's remote. So people working from home is a clear example of that. So what are some of the challenges that the distributed enterprise is facing? So first of all, we mentioned that there are many, many different locations, okay? People working from home, people working from different parts of the world, okay? So the locations is all over the map. The other thing is that the devices also change from cloud computing, central processor servers, to devices, to phones, pads, and so on. So the type of devices are also many, right? The users are also made different kind of users, and also you have users, you have employees, and so on. We'll talk about customer experience later on, but there are also different kinds of people who are interfacing with it. And then finally, the applications can also be many. So this is actually a non-trivial problem, but this is just the way that, how the solution is trying to cover physical location, the different devices that are being used, the different kind of people who using the technology and the solution, the different applications. Okay, so this is what we call distributed enterprise. Okay, next one I mentioned is total experience. So the total experience is made up, TX. Okay, is made up of at least 4 components. is made up of multi-experience. Okay, so we mentioned, for example, right now we have augmented reality, virtual reality. There are different types of experiences. You have also the customer, so that's customer experience. You have people working inside the company, that's employee experience, and user experience. Okay, so the total experience, it considers all the different players that are involved. Okay, and it combines into the total experience. So you need to make everybody happy. So it's basically the goal of the total experience is to provide greater customer satisfaction, provide also loyalty in your customer base, and also making your own employees happy. All right, so that's what total experience is. So again, the TX, it's made up of customer experience, CX, employee experience, EX, user experience, UX, and different kind of experience, MX. Okay, so that's the total experience. The next one, the next trend is called autonomic systems. Let me check on my watch as I go along. Okay, so autonomic systems. So people, let's just differentiate what is an autonomic system. Okay, an autonomic system is a self-managing system that can learn from their environment. Okay, so it can dynamically modify its algorithm. So it's learning as it goes, and from the as it moves along, is learning and adapting at the same time. Okay, so this type of behavior will be implemented in both robots and drones and cars and so on. So you'll be going and learning. So just to distinguish between the various kinds of systems, the automated, so first you have the behavior. In an automated system, the behavior is fixed and the algorithm that you use is also fixed. In an autonomous one, the algorithm is fixed, but the behavior can be adaptable. Okay, so that's an autonomous, that's independent. It can go by itself. And the last leg, the most sophisticated, is called autonomic, in which not only the behavior is also adaptable, but also the algorithm can be changing at the same time. So you can self-modifying and self-learning and then adapt it. So everything, so this is the difference between the previous one where the methods are fixed. The autonomic, the methods and so on can be modified, and then it can be learned and incorporated as a new experience. Okay, the last one is called generative AI. Okay, so everybody have heard about AI, artificial intelligence. Generative AI means that sometimes, very often, you don't have enough data. So the generative means that it can generate data automatically. Okay, it can generate brand new data. Okay, and this can be used in many aspects, like for instance in new drug development and so on. But unfortunately, it also can be used for evil. So there's a lot of scams and fake news and fake type of things that also are misusing this technology. But generative AI means that it can generate new data by itself. Okay, so here are some examples of being able to use generative AI. You can synthesize data, you can create new data from existing data, you can augment the data. Okay, like if you don't have enough data, you can augment it. You can also have self-writing code. Okay, so the code that can be automatically self-written. You don't have to have human generate the code, but AI can generate the code, and also can create new products like drugs. Okay, so that's sort of like the first part of it, which is the most lengthy part of the presentation. based on Gartner Research study. Okay. So the next one, I'm going to talk about at least 3 or 4 other research firms and companies that also have predicted what are the top trends and technologies for 2022. So Forbes magazine also has a technology council, okay, and they have predicting the top 15 trends that I'll be presenting quickly. Again, some of them, as we go along, I'm going to be presenting about 3 or 4 of these survey of technology trends. Some of them will be repeated, you know, and that's probably not strange because everybody's looking at certain things. There are some things that are common across all the different companies, right? So automation is one. Now, in the case of Gartner, they went beyond automation. They say it's not only automation, but hyper automation, right? The thing that actually for the last several years, people have been leveraging AI and data analytics, okay, to be able to predict a certain behavior and be able to make a recommendation. So predictive analytics is the second one. More and more, everything is actually software driven. Okay, so normally in every aspect, you have the hardware and you have the software. Because of the advances in AI, actually the software is playing more and more important role. So because of the focus on software, then similarly, the quality of the software has to be up to par. Okay. The second, another one that is a trend is that how does it impact each of us in our normal life? And that is done through the smart city technologies. So a smart city covers all aspects of society, from education to politics to workforce to healthcare to entertainment and so on. So everything is integrated and goes across different boundaries. So things are is a collaborative effort across different domains. So that's captured by the concept of smart city. Okay, right now, Web 3.0, because of AI and the distributed architecture and edge computing, now there's going to be what they call the new Web 3.0, where the main difference is that it's actually now AI driven. Okay, so you have AI as well as data analytics driving the next version of the internet. I'll be talking a little bit about the future about this in the metaverse as well in the next few slides. The other thing about software is that in the past, the problem always lies that there's not enough staffing who are able to write good and solid and maintainable code. So now the new concept is called the democratization. Democratization means that it no longer requires an expert, okay, to be able to do the job. So the whole coding is moving into low coding. That means smaller amount of coding, and also being able to write it into using very simple languages, as well as no coding. Okay, so again, this is something that potentially is another seminar or webinar about this, you know. But tonight's presentation is going to be focusing on about the global picture, not diving into any specific summary. Okay, so I'm watching my clock. It's still about a few minutes before 7 o'clock. So I'm moving along very well, actually. So don't worry about it. We'll cover everything. The other thing that is required about software is the transparency. So with AI, right now, there are more and more decisions that are being relegated to AI and machine learning, as well as data analytics. But sometimes people don't understand how does the machine or the algorithm make the certain decisions. And since more and more important tasks are being demanded from the software and AI, people would like to see more transparency. Okay, the people would like to know how did the software reach that particular decision. Okay. So things that, everything like, for example, if you have like a new product, people would like to know where it came from, how it's being built, how it's tested, and how it's being maintained. So that means that it's transparency. They would like to know more about things rather than say, well, the AI machine told me this is the answer. Okay, so they would like to dig in more and be able to understand more. Okay, and adoption of cloud technology, I think that's sort of like a continuation of the past. As a matter of fact, right now, the trend is not only cloud technology, but the convergence of cloud, the internet, or the interconnect, and the device. Is that all? How do you combine all three of them together? Okay, and cover the whole spectrum, depending on the amount of data and the speed or the real-time data that when you need the data. That covers from cloud to device or cloud to edge. Okay, so right now, deep fakes. So everybody hears about, fake news. I guess we're always daily bombarded with fake news and people making calls to you and trying to sell you something that don't exist and so on. So this is a comment that just like but they say fire and the knife, they all have double edge. They can be used for the good and they can be used for the bad. Okay, so what we need to do in this era of data, we need to be able to distinguish the two, the good from the bad. Okay, and then how do you use the thing correctly? Okay, the other thing that has been prevalent for the past couple of years is that it used to be a text-driven, where people would type in, the keywords. And right now, more and more is a voice search. It's based on voice technology. And this will actually is growing and improving a lot. So not only can it understand, not only does it listen, but also trying to understand what's the context behind it. Teleworking, I guess this is especially for the last 2 years because of COVID-19, people are working more and more from home. Okay, so there's a new way to work, and this is called the hybrid forms, where you have, you have to physically, maybe you're at home, but you are working through Zoom or some other telecommunications to be able to work as a team. Okay, the other thing that is improving, everything uses batteries, right? From your cell phones to your car. So this is also improving, and actually there are people saying now even planes which have longer mileage and a longer distance to go, even that is being tried to using batteries now. Okay. Cyber scoring. So everybody knows about your credit score, right? Say, okay, well, how much money or how many credit cards do you have? Are you paying your things on time? Well, in the future, the thing is going to be, we'll talk about in the Gartner presentation about cybersecurity, the cybersecurity mesh. Okay, so there will be also cyber scoring. Okay, so people are not only will demand from a company to know what the service they provide, but also how good is their security. Okay, the other thing that goes with AI, and this is we mentioned about being able to explain AI, making it transparent and be able to understand how did AI reach a certain decision. The other thing that is very important, that even though it's a machine, you have to make sure that the machine is following some ethics, okay? And it's not just doing things like, not caring about the people. So ethics is very important. So along with the technology moving along very fast, we need to also move the society, the laws and the regulations, the policies also have to move along, okay? Like everybody remembers when the drones came out, people say, well, drones are sort of entertaining, but also people start putting cameras on under the drones, and then you're flying your drones to your neighbors, you know. So there's a data privacy type of issues. So the laws in the society need to very closely follow the technology and not lag behind the technology by a lot. Okay. Okay. The next thing that is actually I left it for last because this is sort of introduces me to the interesting topic, the non-fungible token. Okay. So first of all, everybody knows what the token is, right? So everybody takes your kid to the Chuck E. Cheese and you use a coin for them to play games, right? So that's a token. The token is sort of like a representation and allows you to do certain things with the token. What's a non-fungible token? Okay, so let me define what fungible means. Fungible means replaceable or interchangeable. So let's give you an example. Cash is a fungible token because let's say if I give you a $100 bill, you can convert the $100 bill into 10 $10 bills or 5 $20 bills or 100 $1 bills. Okay, they all represent the same. They're all interchangeable. So that's cash. Cash is interchangeable. While non-fungible tokens means that they are not interchangeable. Okay, and a clear example of that is like, for instance, art. Okay, art. You can have multiple copies, or a better example, especially for the ladies, is a diamond. So let's say you have a 2-carat diamond. Well, the 2-carat diamond that you have, if you lose it, and people say, well, I'll give you another 2-carat diamond, that diamond is going to be different than the one that you used to have. Because even though they're all the same, you can say it's a 2-carat diamond, but they are not the same. Each of the items is unique and non-replaceable. So NFTs cannot be divisible, cannot be split, and cannot be exchanged. Okay, so that's the concept of non-fungible tokens. The reason why I'm mentioning this one is because my next talk in February is going to be about the metaverse. And the metaverse there's a lot of the key concepts, one of them being the non-fungible token. All right. So this table illustrates the difference between a fungible and non-fungible token. A fungible token, that means that it's exchangeable, just like I mentioned, it's a cash. Okay. And also you can fractionalize, you can divide it. You can divide a $100 bills into 100 $1 bills. You can divide it. The non-fungible token is non-divisible. Okay. And each of them is unique. They are not replaceable and they're not interchangeable. Okay. So most typical example are art, diamonds, and so on, or even a car. If you have say 2015 Camry, well, your car, your 2015 Camry is different than your neighbor's 2015 Camry, right? Because they're not the same. The mileage is different, the condition is different, and so on. Okay, so that's so much for non-fungible tokens. Okay, let's go over some of the other things that are in the 2022 timeframe and talk about not about things or technologies per se, but about the concepts. Okay. So first of all, we talk about that the whole world is moving to a digital world. Okay, so that's called the concept of digitization. The other thing is that things are more and more virtual. Like for instance, the next thing we'll talk about the metaverse or the virtual reality. Things don't necessarily exist in the physical world. Okay, so more and more things are virtual. So besides the real physical world, there's also a virtual world. Okay, so that's virtualization. The other idea is the digital twin. That means that you exist as a person, but there's also a twin that is purely data, and that's called the virtual twin, your virtual twin. Okay. So another concept that is important, more and more becoming more and more crucial right now in 2022 is the convergence of technology. we'll talk about a lot of the new technologies. We have 5G, we have IoT, we have AI, you have satellite communications, a lot of stuff, right? And a lot of them are converging. So they don't exist by themselves in a silo. They actually combine, okay? So the convergence of technology is another trend that we're seeing. Okay, so there are 5 of them. Let's just talk about AI everywhere, okay? So I guess this is the thing that I'm going to skip a lot of stuff because AI has been discussed so often and so much. The one thing about is, again, emphasizing another concept of democratization. That means that it no longer takes an expert to be able to do the things, because as we move along in the technology, you cannot find enough qualified people. As a matter of fact, right now, that's the problem, that number one problem that society is facing, is that there's not enough people to do the job. So right now, for example, unemployment may still be relatively high because the companies cannot find the right people that they need. There may be a lot of people, but they are not qualified to do the job that they require the workforce to do. So one of the ways to fix that is to make it so that it's no longer require a data analyst expert, or does not require an AI expert. That's called the concept of democratization. That means that you lower the level and everybody can do the job. For example, we are not all car mechanics. That means that not everybody can fix a car, but everybody can drive a car. That's the same concept of a democratization. So right now I'm watching my watch. It's 7:05. I guess our seminar finishes at 7:30. I should be able to wrap everything up by 7:10 or 7:15. Okay, everything as a service. So there's more and more do it yourself. So it's a self-service right now is now a trend. Also, we already talked about no code revolution, so I won't expand anymore. So I'm going to start speeding up because I already covered a lot of the material in some of the previous slides. Digitalization, everybody is going digital, from physical moving to virtual, going to digital, okay? Datafication, that means that we're more and more into the era of data. Data is very important. Everything is data driven, okay? And we also talk about virtualization. That means that besides the physical, there's the virtual component of it. And especially right now, everybody's talking about the Metaverse. So that's going to be my seminar talk in February. It's going to cover in the Metaverse. One thing, just an important thing that I want to mention in the last bullet here is that we mentioned that before, the interface with the machine used to be visual. Everything was text driven. People will type in keywords, okay? Then gradually move into audio. So people would issue commands to Siri and so on, to all the machines via voice, okay? So that becomes the voice. That will be even enhanced to the other, altogether there are 5 senses, right? So this visual, audio, there's the touch, the smell, and so on. So there will be more and more capturing the human senses and going beyond just the visual and the audio. So I'm not going to talk about a little bit. I'm going to leave it for the next month, talk about the Metaverse. But everybody heard that Facebook just changed its name to Meta, right? And right now, most of the major companies, including Apple, Microsoft, IBM, NVIDIA, they're all jumping into the Metaverse wagon. So I'll be giving a more overview of Metaverse in February. Transparency, governance, and accountability. So we already talked about transparency. That means that people are demanding to understand how does AI and data analytics come up with a solution. So it's more transparent. Okay. The other thing about governance, governance means that who owns the data? Okay. So let me just jump into the next slide. So I'm using the airplane here the airplane is run by the Rolls-Royce engines. Okay, so Rolls-Royce manufactures the engines, and then Boeing manufactures the plane, and then say, you know, United or Delta bought the plane. Okay, and then finally there's somebody who operates the plane, and then there's the customer who is riding the plane. Well, the question here on this slide is who owns the data? Okay, so basically I'm going to just leave it open maybe for the discussion part of it. If people are interested about who owns the data, I'll be glad to share my view about it. But this is what the governance is about. And then energy is always at the crucial part of it, because, you know, right now, if you don't have energy, if you don't have any electricity, then everything is dead, right? Even if you have cell phone, if the electricity is out, your cell phone don't work either, because the relay station don't work. So now there's a lot of progress being made also in the energy front. The latest one being fusion. Okay, fusion is the way that the sun works. Okay, so the next one is going to be interesting, because this is an international view of it. This is in the last year's technology trend and prediction for 2021. I also cover what the top 10 trends from Damo Academy, Damo Yuan, okay, in Chinese. So I'll be covering just 2 slides. There are a lot of things in common. AI is being used as a tool for everything, okay? So AI for science. Also co-evolution of large and small scale computing models. So it's not only either large or small, but it's actually the hybrid and the combination. We talk about cloud computing and edge computing, okay? In the area of chips, it's the silicon photonic chips. So people always talk about, well, what's the next material beyond silicon? You know, some people say it's graphene, okay? They're saying, well, we're going to be leveraging not only about electronics, but also photonics, optoelectronics. So photons and electrons working together. We already covered in the last slide about renewable energy is also leveraging AI. The next one is called perceptive soft robotics. That means that the robots in the future will not be necessarily made by hard metal, but also they'll be made of soft material, like flexible electronics, okay? Things that can bend, okay? And not only that, but these robots will be equipped by human perception. We mentioned that besides the video and the audio, also I'll be able to smell and touch, okay? Okay. The next thing is that there's a lot of progress in terms of medicine. So people talk about precision medicine as well as personalized medicine, because right now there's a lot of advances in the genomics. So people can cure and treat a person as an individual, not as just a general disease, all right? We already covered about privacy preserving computation also in the Garner presentation. People worry about data privacy. The other thing is that integrating satellite and terrestrial communication, okay? So we talk about in the terrestrial, on the land base, we talk about 5G, right? Okay, well, right now there's a lot of satellite communications, low Earth orbit. I also made a presentation last year on low Earth orbit. So for people who are, say, walking or navigating in the seas or in the desert where there's no relay stations, or in the Himalayas, how do you reach people? Well, you have to be able to reach it via satellite, okay? The other things I also mentioned in passing is that cloud network and device convergence is that going from the cloud, which is the main servers and the larger storage, to the device, for example, a car, okay, or a phone, where you need to be able to respond instantaneously, like for self-driving cars, okay? And the last but not least is extended reality. So we're extending from augmented reality to virtual reality, and we'll be talking a little bit more in the next mass presentation on the Metaverse, which is covering extended reality. Okay, This slide I'm going to cover in 1 minute, for people who heard about all this terminology all this evening. Well, they say, well, where are all the current stuff, you know? So everybody have heard about AI, heard about voice search, okay, blockchain, IoT, edge computing, predictive and personalized medicine, 5G, facial recognition, and autonomic driving, you know, automatic self-driving cars, okay? So these are the current technologies, but we need to distinguish individual technologies from trends. Trends are things that are moving, okay? So I'm watching my watch, it's 7:15. So this is almost the end of my talk. Okay, this slide, this is one slide, the last slide, is that I also saw a presentation on YouTube that's the title of that YouTube was called 15 Emerging Technologies That Will Change the World. Okay, so this is a 2022 YouTube video. So this is in descending order. So it's from number 1 to number 15. And it's interesting to know that some of them, of course, people have already heard, like quantum computing, blockchain, 3D printing, smart homes, okay, edge computing, hydrogen cells, graphene, and so on. Those are pretty much people have already heard about. There are a few things that caught my eye. For example, fighting fire with sound instead of with water, okay? The other thing is that there's also the new communications is based on satellite constellations like Starlink, okay? Concrete that is self-healing. So let's say that a house that is old and the concrete is cracking. So how does the concrete can self-heal and self-repair? Okay, talking about floating farms in the sea. People have already talked about vertical farms in the city. Well, how about floating farms on the sea? Okay, so, and also there's the next version of GPS. Okay, so anyway, that's so much. Okay, so this is the last slide. So in this webinar, I've presented actually 4 or 5 different companies' views about technology for 2022. We cover US-based as well as some international China-based viewpoints about the trends for 2022. You can see that some of them are also perennials. Now, you know, like flowers, they call it perennials, means that they bloom all year long. Okay, well, perennials means that technologies that have been around with us for the last 3 to 5 years. You know, AI, you know, 5G, IoT, edge computing, cloud, and face recognition and voice search. Those have been around with us for the last 5 years. And there's some new ones as well. And Metaverse that we'll be talking about maybe next month. Low code, no code solutions, neuromorphic chips. You know, people who are in semiconductors, people say, well, what's the next thing with semiconductors? What's beyond silicon? Well, it's all like all the silicon carbide and the new materials. I gave a presentation last year also on the status of semiconductors. The last is that we talk about concepts like we live in the era of data. We talk about digitalization, the existence of a virtual world, automation, flexibility, agility, transparency, security, privacy, governance, and so on. So all of that was captured in tonight's presentation. So that's the end of my talk. So before opening for Q&A, I just want to show one slide, sort of like a preview for my next month's webinar. It's going to be the metaverse. Okay, so I guess this is probably the hottest topic since October of 2021, when Mark Zuckerberg changed his company's name to Meta. And right now, everybody's talking about the metaverse. So in February, I'll be giving a webinar on what is the metaverse, why do you need it, who are the players in the metaverse, and how does it work? All right. So I think that wraps up my presentation. I'm going to turn over the presentation to the host and open up for Q&A.
Thank you, Dr. Kao. What a wonderful overview of surveys of the most cutting edge technologies, especially it's drawn from different sources like Gartner, like Damo, who are the highly reputable sources of this information. Yeah, and allow me to share quickly a PowerPoint slides on here. So again, welcome to our CIE technical seminar today. Let me fast forward to a thank you page. This is our contact information and where you can find us on different media channels. And I get a question from the audience that is like where to find us and where can we review this or replay this video particularly. So first of all, this is our website, cie-sf.org. You can find upcoming events information here. So on January 22nd, we will host a special topic on AI modeling. Is model compression always harmful to the performance of neural networks? This interesting topic by a PhD student, Qing Jin, from Northeastern University. And so let me answer the question to the audience. So this is our YouTube channel. We keep our recordings on this channel after editing. So today's video will be available in a few days after some editing work. And if you type in CIE space SF, you should get to our channel strictly. And okay, now it's our Q&A time. I will ask Vicky, please read the first question to the audience and to the speaker.
Yeah, actually, I do see a couple of the questions on the WeChat. So let me address the questions that I see on WeChat, and then we can open it up for the audience as a Q&A. Okay.
Yes.
So let me answer one of the questions first. Is how do you see COVID and climate change shaping technology trends in 2022? So I think that throughout my presentation, I already mentioned that COVID has impacted a lot because of the distributed enterprise, the way that people are working, teleworking, and so on. So there's no question that COVID has impacted for the past couple of years, the trend. Okay, there's also a lot of new progress in the healthcare sector because of the COVID. Okay, like for example, last year I talked about what they call the health passports, right? So people in India and China, when they travel, they're required to have on their cell phones, they have this code that allows them to travel shorter or longer distances. Okay, so you can see there's definitely a lot of impact. I think if you review all the slides, as I say, you can view the recording, or if you are interested in a certain set of slides, I cannot promise to give you the entire presentation, but if you are interested in a few slides, I'll be glad to send it to you. You can email me at bgao2k@yahoo.com. Okay, so that's the first question in terms of the COVID and climate change. Okay, the other thing about climate change is about we talk about renewable energy. Okay, so that's also the impact of climate change and COVID on the technology. Now, the other question that I see on chat, I can answer very quickly because I don't know anything about it. And it says, what's the impact of AI for pet development? Because personally, I don't own any pets. So as they say in the US, is that things that you don't know, You just have to be frank and say that you don't know. So I cannot illuminate you guys in terms of AI for pets and so on. But there's no question that AI, for example, is actually everywhere. Okay, so as a matter of fact, some of the first things that people learn on AI, like even recognizing a cat, actually all started with the pets. Is that people say, well, how can you tell a cat from a dog, or for a dog from a horse? Okay, how do you do recognition? Okay, so all of that is actually impacted the development of AI and machine learning. So all of that, machine learning actually is a field that actually started by trying to differentiate and tell what is a cat. So that's just to tell you that there's no escaping in terms of the impact of everything has an impact on everything. Okay, so impact on pets, on AI. That's an example that I can give you in terms of machine learning, for example. Okay, so those are the questions that I see on chat. The staff is welcome to pass along any questions that I did not see, and then we can also open for the audience in general.
We have one more question. More? Was
okay.
there...
Convergent technologies? Okay. So what I mean by that is that right now, each technology is not by itself. For example, let me give you an example of converging technologies. In the self-driving cars, you have to leverage 5G with edge computing, okay, and AI. For example, you have converging technologies mean that there's more than one technology and being used together to enable a solution. For example, if you don't have 5G, the speed and the capacity of 5G, you cannot have automatic driving. Why? And if you don't have edge computing, you can also not have automatic driving, because the response time that is required for a car, the latency time is so low that you cannot send the information to the cloud and wait for the response in order to have a response. So that is an example of converging technologies, converging satellite communications, converging 5G technology, converging edge technology, all into one to provide the solution. So that's the definition of a converging technology. It's not like the technology is, there's a technology called converging technologies, but it's a converging multiple technologies for a solution. That's what it's meant.
Okay, thank you. I saw earlier a question on will the slides be available to the audience, to people who register?
Okay, so let me give you the answer. So you are welcome to, of course, review the slides through the video, the recording, okay? And if you want to go take screenshots, you're welcome to do that. I'll be very glad to share a subset of my presentation. I have about 60 slides in my presentation. I cannot give you the entire presentation, okay? So that's sort of like personal IP, because I put together all the material together myself. Even though I want to acknowledge all the firms like Damo and Gartner and so on, who actually have a very large staff to actually do the material, put the material together. But most of the slides, actually, I sort of like pull together from the internet myself, okay? So the conclusion and the topics are defined by those companies. But a lot of the material that I presented are actually material that I myself dig up from the cyberspace. Okay, so I can share with you, if you're asking me for something, can you send me the slide on cybersecurity? I'll be more than glad to do that. My email is B as in Bill, KAO, the number 2K, bgao2k@yahoo.com. So if you need anything, send me an email and I'll be glad to answer your email. Okay, but don't expect to get the 60, the whole deck. Hopefully that answers your question. So any slides I'll be glad to share with you, but don't ask me for all 60 of them. Just ask me for say 5 to 10 slides.
Okay, thank you. I do see another question. Do you see NFT the future?
NFT?
Yes, NFT.
Okay,
in the,
so
in the chat.
right now it's very hot. As a matter of fact, personally, I don't understand it fully myself. You know, how much value there is in something that is virtual. For instance, people are taking, say, a photo of the Mona Lisa, for example. Okay, say, or right now they're selling properties in New York. You know, so like real estate properties that don't exist. They only exist in the virtual world. Okay, so I think that if you can wait for a month, I think you'll get a clear picture of it. I'll be giving a presentation on the Metaverse that will cover the virtual reality, cover mixed reality, and so on. Talk about the gadgets, talk about the major companies like Apple, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Facebook. They're all working on the Metaverse. Okay, so NFTs are, as you look from the definition that I gave this evening, are things that are really unique. Okay, and then you can get ownership or IP on certain data, on certain things. So for instance, if you own a diamond ring, you can do an NFT on your ring because nobody else owns that, right? But a lot of things are actually, the thing with the virtual world is something that even personally, I'm still learning quite a bit about it. So I'll be glad to share my opinion maybe in another month.
Another question from ODN is, was there any significant progress in the explainable AI in 2021? Do you expect in 2022? If yes, what approach it may take?
Okay. I think that, I don't know words like any specific examples of explainable AI, but basically what they are trying to do right now is that any conclusion or solution that the AI is providing. So let's say AI is making a recommendation, okay? Right now, the customer base is asking for the reason and the rationale behind it, okay? So I don't have actually right now in hand an example of explainable AI, but right now more and more decisions are being passed on to the machine to make a decision, and people are trying to make sure that they understand, if especially things that don't make sense. They say, well, how did the machine come up with that recommendation? So they're asking the companies who are providing those answers to find out from the algorithm, how did they reach that decision? All right, so that's explainable AI. We understand the algorithms that are being used in machine learning, but there are more things that are involved, like what are the facts and how did they reach that decision? And that is actually very specific. So you probably will need to ask a little bit more specific question and then ask to the company who is providing you with that answer. They may have they may be using the AI machine or a computer that gives them the answer. So that company is again the question about the governance. Who owns the solution? Who owns the data? Okay, so you need to go and ask them to say, well, Can you dig up more about how did the learning algorithm reach that conclusion? And maybe even some of the staff. The other thing is that in order for somebody to make the thing understandable, you have to really understand both domains. You have to understand the algorithms and you need to understand the domain. So let's say if you're asking a question on healthcare, really you need to have medical knowledge in order to be able to answer that, okay?
Another question from audience is, would you give us an example of how the convergent technology might be used?
I didn't get that. Could you repeat the question again?
Will you give us an example of how convergent technology might be used?
Okay, I think I gave the answer about self-driving cars, right? So let's say that a car needs to be able to start and stop and make a turn by itself. So right now the technology, because even 5G is just at the beginning of 5G. 5G covers from 2020 to 2030. Okay, so the thing needs to be able for the car to drive by itself and be able to stop before it hits a person who is, say, coming down from the sidewalk. That requires the convergence of 5G technology, the convergence of edge technology, okay, and some of the technologies that are built inside the car, the sensors, and so on. So there's, in any solution, is made up of many components of the solution. So that's why it's meant by converging. Converging means coming together of many technologies. That's what converging means, okay? So it's not like one technology is going to be solve a problem. It usually requires many technologies coming together to solve a problem. So that's what is meant by converging. Any other questions or comments?
Another related question is, with the goal of the convergence and democratization of data, what role should all the governments play with regard to the transparency and accountability?
Okay, so we're mixing several things into one. Okay, so the converging technology, that's just a solution, providing a solution, leveraging multiple technologies. Okay, the other thing about the part that the governments are involved and how do different companies or governments leverage or use the technology, that's a separate issue. So I did make a comment that says that the society, what I meant by society is mean by the governing body, right? The laws, the people that either enforce the laws or Congress or the government, the country. All of this need to work along with the technology. So as technology is making very fast progress on many fronts, the society, the government, the agencies, the companies need to make rules and regulations that guide and regulate the technology. So for example, there's including Elon Musk. He has this thing called, I think it's called OpenAI, that says that, if you let AI just go by itself, it may actually do more harm than good, okay? So you need to have a body who is overseeing the progress, okay? Make sure that they don't step out of bounds. So we mentioned also about ethical, not only explainable AI, transparent AI, but also ethical AI that actually conforms with the rules and the laws. Okay. So I think that, I think in the question is sort of like putting everything into one bowl. We need to separate and distinguish all the different aspects of it. All right. All right. So it looks like we have come to the end of the seminar. It's 7:30. I have a few minutes, so if somebody wants to stay and just talk about certain areas, I'll be glad to stay on for a few more minutes. But otherwise, we'll just wrap it up.
That's great. There are two more questions I see. First is, where do you see the progress of a cashless society and the rise of facial recognition heading into the future?
Okay. That's two questions, right? Two separate questions.
Yes.
So let's talk about the cashless thing first. In my view, okay, there was a saying, I think it's Bill Gates who said that, is that everything that people predict will happen in the short term meaning say 2 years, it actually will take longer than that. And everything that the people predict that will not happen until 10 years will actually happen in less than that. Okay, so that's a lot of wisdom in that saying, is that some people tend to be too optimistic in terms of the short-term accomplishments, and too pessimistic in terms of the longer term. So really the truth always falls in between. So the same thing can be, philosophy can be applied to cashless. There's no question that the society as a whole is moving towards at least immediately, there's a coexistence of both cash, the real, again, is the real and the virtual. Okay, so that's part of I think that I'll be covered also in part of the metaverse. The cash will not go away by itself, in a short term. But there's no question that cryptocurrencies and currencies that exist in the virtual world will begin to happen. Okay, now when does it actually transition to another one, or do they exist for the foreseeable future? Nobody can tell. Okay, so that's the question about cashless society and how to handle money, the financial aspects, where with cash is the real world, cryptocurrencies and so on, they're maybe in the virtual world. Okay. The other question on facial recognition, I think that there's clearly a difference between the political system in terms of what is allowed and not allowed. Okay. So in China, everybody heard about the Big Brother, right? The Big Brother meaning there always somebody's watching you. Okay. And people take it, the facial recognition, not only facial recognition, but recognition in general. Like I gave a talk on gait recognition, G-A-I-T. Gait means the posture and the movement. So there's so many different ways to recognize a person. So again, the comment or the philosophy that I'm going to answer is the following. Any technology can be a double-edged sword. It can be used for the good. It can be used for a different purpose. That's not necessarily, well, good and evil is defined by different people, okay? Different society and different systems, okay? But what I'm saying is that every technology can be used for the good or for evil. Okay, I'm not going to pass the judgment what is good and evil. Okay, but basically every technology has the good side and the bad side of it. So recognition in general, whether it's facial recognition or gait recognition, or it's fingerprinting, or it's looking at the eyes, the irises of an eye, or looking at the fingerprint and so on, they can be used to constrain people and identify people. Yeah, I think it depends on where do you stand, on which side do you stand. Okay, so you can be the beneficiary of one, or you can be the victim of that. So that's actually my answer to things about facial recognition or recognition in general. Okay. Hopefully answer most of the questions. If there are any questions that you would like to send me an email, I'll be also glad to correspond to you. All right. So thanks everyone for attending, and thank you for your attention. Hopefully we'll see you in another month talking about the metaverse.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kao. Thank you everyone for joining today's very nice discussion. Thank you for coming, and we look forward to seeing you in our upcoming events. Please check our media channel. Thank you.
I want to also thank Yansu for hosting the event, as well as the CIE helpers to help with managing Zoom and the audience.
Not a problem.
Okay, have a good evening, everyone. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.